My name's Anna. I sell houses, the big fancy ones with views, and the small cozy types that feel like yesterday's bread, warm and welcoming. My office is way up in the sky, or so it feels on the 22nd floor. It's a world of glass that reflects everything, the clouds, the birds, and the infinite hustle of the city. So, here's where it all starts. There's this guy, Mike. Not just any guy. The type that walks into a room and even the air takes notice. He started working at the firm next door about a year ago. The first time we met was by the coffee machine. It's one of those fancy ones that can do everything except drink the coffee for you. I was fighting with the machine, trying to get it to give me something strong enough to keep my eyelids from staging a protest. Need a hand? That was Mike. Smiling, like he knew the secret joke behind every little malfunction. Yeah, unless you know how to negotiate with a robot, I snapped back, more out of caffeine deprivation than any real annoyance. He laughed, that easy kind of laugh that's infectious. Let me try. These things are more sensitive than my mom's chihuahua. He fiddled a bit, pushed some buttons like he was playing an arcade game, and voila, the machine surrendered 2 cups of the darkest brew. Mike, he said, handing me one. Anna. Thanks, I replied, taking a sip. Heaven in a cup and just the jolt I needed. We started bumping into each other more. Coffee breaks turned into little chats about this and that. He was easy to talk to. He had a way of listening that made you want to tell him stuff you'd think was duller than watching paint dry. One day, we grabbed lunch together at a little cafe just a block away from our buildings. It was becoming a thing, us, talking. About work, movies, the mess of the world. You ever think about doing something else? Like, not selling houses? He asked once, picking at his sandwich like it was a puzzle. Nah, I shrugged. It's in my blood. Plus, I get a kick out of making people's dreams come true. What about you? Ever think of running away and joining the circus? He chuckled, shaking his head. Can't. My mom would miss me too much. There it was. Mike was a mama's boy. Not in a living in her basement playing video games way, but close. He lived with her, took care of her. Hell, she even came to his office sometimes, like she was checking in on her investment. I thought it was sweet. A bit odd, maybe, but sweet. I liked that he cared so much. It was rare. Life at the office and with Mike was like rolling with a fast current, and before I knew it, a year had whisked by. The casual lunches and coffee breaks had woven into something a lot tighter, a lot more serious. One Friday, the office was buzzing more than usual. Word gets around when something's up, and around here, it spreads faster than a wildfire. I was plugging away at my desk when Liz, a coworker from 2 cubicles down, strutted over like she had some hot gossip. Hey, Anna, everyone's saying he's gonna pop the question soon. You know, a ring, the whole shebang. She smirked, popping her gum. Let him talk, I shrugged, trying to brush it off, but my heart was racing. Mike hadn't hinted anything, but the thought sent a zing through my spine. Later that day, as the sun dipped below the horizon painting the sky in strokes of orange and purple, Mike suggested we grab dinner instead of just a quick bite at the cafe. Something about the way he said it, all nervous-like, had my stomach doing somersaults. We ended up at this cozy little Italian place he knew, tucked away from the usual hustle of the city. It was the kind of spot you'd miss if you weren't looking for it, with dim lighting and candles flickering on the tables. The conversation flowed easy, but I could tell Mike was edgy. He fumbled with his napkin, cleared his throat more times than needed, and kept avoiding eye contact. So, Anna, he finally started, his voice a bit shaky. We've been doing this, us, for a while now, and I... Spit it out, Mike. You're killing me here, I cut in, half joking, half dying inside. He chuckled, that nervous sort of laugh that didn't reach his eyes. Then, he took a deep breath, reached into his pocket, and slid a small box across the table towards me. I want to do this for real, Anna. Marry me? The room spun a little. I mean, Liz's teasing, the office bets, suddenly, it was all real. But looking into Mike's hopeful eyes, I felt this solid, sure thing settle in my chest. "Yeah, Mike. Yes." I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. He grinned, relief washing over his face, and slipped the ring on my finger. It was simple, nothing too flashy, just like us. We spent the rest of the evening wrapped up in our little bubble, the chatter around us fading into a blur. The next week at work was like walking onto a stage. Heads turned, whispers followed me down the hall, and even the old-timers slapped Mike on the back and threw him knowing looks. And amid all the congratulations and cheeky comments, the bets came up again. Liz, with her big mouth, couldn't help herself. "Gotta say, Anna, didn't think you'd say yes. What's the over-under on this lasting then?" She laughed, nudging me. I rolled my eyes. "Place your bets, Liz. But we're in this for the long haul." "Hear that, folks? She's confident. Might want to reconsider your stakes," Liz announced to the room, which earned a round of laughter and more playful bets. But it was all noise. In that whirlwind of a moment, with a new ring on my finger and Mike by my side, the office could have fallen down around us, and I wouldn't have cared. We were doing this, and that's all that mattered. Our wedding was nothing fancy, just close friends and family in a small garden downtown. It was perfect, simple, intimate, and just about us. However, the real challenge started when we were supposed to set up our new life together. As we were packing up my apartment, Mike dropped the bomb. "Anna, I've been thinking. Mom and I have been living alone in this rented house since Dad passed. She won't feel good alone without me. What do you think about moving in with her? It could save us a ton on rent and bills." I sighed. It wasn't what I wanted, but how could I say no? He was right, his mom had been alone a lot. "Okay, let's give it a try," I conceded, trying to sound more upbeat than I felt. Moving day was a blur. His mom, Martha, welcomed us with open arms and an endless list of how things were done in her house. At first, it was fine. I thought, I can handle this. It's temporary. But as days turned into weeks, the true colors of living under Martha's roof began to show. She had rules for everything, from how laundry should be done to how the groceries should be stored. One evening, we were setting the table for dinner when she cornered me in the kitchen. "Anna, you need to start taking more responsibility around here. It's tradition for the daughter-in-law to handle the household," she stated firmly, her eyes pinning me in place. I was chopping vegetables, my hands stilling for a moment. "Martha, I work full-time, just like Mike. I'm happy to help, but we should split the chores equally." Mike walked in just then, and I looked to him for support. He was silent for a moment, then shrugged. "Mom's got a point, Anna. It's how she's always done things. Can't we just try it her way?" His words stung. I felt betrayed. How could he not see how unfair this was? 6 months in, the situation hadn't improved. If anything, it got worse. Martha started talking about moving to a bigger, more modern house. "Anna, you're in real estate. Start looking for something nice for us, a place where we can all live comfortably," she'd say, flipping through house listings. I tried to explain as gently as I could. "Martha, we really can't afford a new house right now. It's not just about finding a place, it's about being able to maintain it financially." She would wave off my concerns. "Nonsense. You'll find a good deal. You're good at your job, aren't you?" The pressure was mounting, and I felt trapped. I remembered the office bets about how long my marriage would last. It seemed everyone expected it to crumble. Determined not to give them that satisfaction, I gritted my teeth and bore it, hoping for a change. Just when I thought things couldn't get more chaotic, Mike's sister, Jen, showed up at our doorstep, tears streaming down her face, a toddler on her hip. The door barely swung open before she was halfway through it, her voice cracking with panic. "He kicked me out, Mike. He's done with me," said I cheated, which I didn't. She sobbed, collapsing into the hallway. Mike, ever the family man, wrapped an arm around her, guiding her to the living room. "It's okay, Jen. You can stay here as long as you need," he assured her. I stood there, mouth slightly open, trying to process another bombshell. As they settled down, I pulled Mike aside, my voice low. "Mike, this house is already packed. Maybe it's time we found our own place?" He shook his head, his brows knitting together. "Anna, come on, this is temporary. Just until Jen gets back on her feet. We can handle this." Handle this? It was like every day added another weight I wasn't sure I could carry. But I nodded, resigning myself to the new reality. The next weeks were a blur of chaos. Jen, bless her, was dealing with a lot, but that meant all her responsibilities fell to me. I'd come home from a long day at work to a house turned upside down by her 2-year-old whirlwind, Tommy. Toys everywhere, food splatters on the walls, you name it, Tommy did it. It felt like no matter what I did, it was never enough. The final straw came at dinner a few nights later. We were all sitting around the table, a tense silence hanging over us as we picked at our food. That's when Martha, with her usual flair for stirring the pot, dropped her next idea. "You know, Anna, you're out working all day, and clearly, the house is suffering for it. My friend's daughter, Lisa, she's looking for a job as an au pair. Maybe you should hire her to help out," she suggested, like she was doing me a favor. "Yeah? And who's paying for this au pair?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Martha smiled, a thin, knowing smile. "Well, you are, of course. You're the one with the job." I glanced at Mike, hoping for some support, but he just focused on his plate, silent. Something inside me snapped. Fine, if hiring this girl meant less time at this madhouse, then so be it. "All right, Martha. Have her come by tomorrow. We'll talk," I conceded, pushing my plate away, appetite gone. Lisa started the next day. She was a sweet girl, early 20s, and good with Tommy, which was a relief. She cooked, she cleaned, and the house seemed calmer. But it wasn't long before I noticed the giggles, the lingering look she shared with Mike when she thought I wasn't looking. One night, after I saw her touch his arm, laughing at something he said, I confronted him. "Do you think it's appropriate, the way Lisa acts around you?" I asked, my voice tight. Mike just chuckled, waving my concerns away like they were flies. "Anna, you're being ridiculous. She's just a kid, and I've known her since she was in diapers. Don't be jealous." Jealous? Was I? Or was it just the final wear down of living in a house where I felt more like an outsider than a family member? I shook my head, trying to push away the nagging doubts. "All right, Mike. If you say so," I replied, but the seed of unease had already been planted. Living in a crowded house with your in-laws is like walking on eggshells, you never know which step will crack. But worse than the thin ice was the creeping realization that things were amiss. At first, it was a 20 here, a 50 there. Small change, maybe misplaced. Then it was earrings, a bracelet my grandma gave me. That kind of stuff doesn't just walk away. One evening, after noticing my favorite watch was gone, I confronted Lisa, the au pair. "Lisa, have you seen a silver watch around? It's missing." She gave me a wide-eyed innocent look. "Oh no, Anna, I haven't seen anything. Maybe it's lost?" Enough was enough. I installed hidden cameras in my room, a desperate move for desperate times. I wasn't going to accuse anyone without proof. But what I found blew the lid off any petty theft. It was a Wednesday, the kind of day where you just can't face going home. I sat in a cafe, laptop open, pretending to work, but really, I was watching the live feed from the camera. What I saw crushed me. Jen, Mike's sister, snuck into our room. She went straight for the drawer where I kept my jewelry, her movements too practiced. My heart sank. Then, the door opened again, it was Mike and Lisa. They weren't just chatting. No, they were, together. On our bed. It felt like a punch to the gut. I sat there, the taste of my coffee turning bitter. Anger boiled up, but a cold, calculating part of me pushed it down. No, I wasn't going to storm home. I needed a plan. Over the next few days, I collected every shred of evidence. videos, times, everything. But revenge? That needed to be sweet, not hasty. One day, accidentally leaving my laptop open on a real estate listing was part of the play. It was a beautiful house, big yard, underpriced by half. Mike walked by, stopped, and stared at the screen. "What's this?" he asked, eyes lighting up. "Oh, just some listing I found." "Too bad we're not looking, huh?" I murmured, feigning disinterest. He grabbed the laptop, scrolling through the photos. "Are you kidding? This is perfect. Why wouldn't we look at this?" Martha came over, peering over his shoulder. "Oh, Mike. It's beautiful. Call them, now." Mike was practically bouncing as he dialed the number. "Hi, yes, I'm calling about the listing." "Yes, we want to put down a deposit." No need for a full check, we trust it's all good," he said, all but throwing our money at them. "Who's it going to be registered to?" I asked, my voice sweet as syrup. "Me, obviously. And you'll help with the payments, right?" He didn't even look at me as he spoke. "Of course," I replied, my smile hiding daggers. Everything was falling into place. Sitting back, I watched as they celebrated, oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. Mike, Martha, and Jen, they all thought they had won. But the game had just changed, and I was now playing for keeps. The ink was barely dry on the documents for the new house when Mike decided to throw a dinner that felt more like a victory lap than a family gathering. The entire crew was there, his mom, Martha, his sister, Jen, and yes, Lisa, who'd become too familiar in all the wrong ways. The dining room buzzed with a kind of giddy tension as I walked in, the air thick with smug satisfaction. Mike was grinning like a kid who'd just gotten away with stealing cookies. "All right, everyone, big news," Mike announced, standing at the head of the table with a glass of wine in hand. "We're moving into the new house next week. Mom, Jen, and, of course, Lisa here will be coming with me. Anna and Anna won't be joining us." Martha clapped her hands, almost bouncing in her chair. "Here are the divorce papers. I think Lisa suits my son better. You should leave here, right now." I took the envelope without a word, my hand steady as I pulled out the papers. I looked around the table, at their expectant faces, waiting for me to break, to make a scene. But I didn't give them the satisfaction. Instead, I signed each page, each signature a silent seal on my exit from this twisted soap opera. I stood up, my chair scraping back loudly in the quiet that followed. "Enjoy the house," I said, my tone even, a small smile playing on my lips. I walked out with my head held high, their laughter echoing behind me. They thought they'd won, but the game was far from over. A week after I'd moved out, living in a small but peaceful apartment, I got a call from Sarah, a friend who lived near the new dream home. "Hey, you won't believe what's happening." Sarah's voice was a mix of concern and disbelief. "Your ex and his circus moved into the house, and now there's a major stink, literally. The whole neighborhood is complaining." "Oh? What's going on?" I asked, a knowing smile creeping across my face. "It's the sewage, Anna. Something's wrong with their pipes, sewage is leaking out onto the street. It's a disaster. They've had plumbers in all day." The news was a delicious twist I hadn't anticipated so soon. "They're in deep, you know. Mike's trying to sort it, but he's out of his depth. No money to fix it properly," Sarah continued, her voice almost sympathetic. As I hung up, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. The perfect house, the perfect scam. The victory they thought they had was crumbling, just like the pipes in their precious new home. And as for me? I was finally free, breathing air that smelled a lot sweeter than the one surrounding them. After signing those divorce papers, it wasn't just a matter of packing up my old life, but gearing up for a battle. First thing, I met with a lawyer, Mr. Davidson, a no-nonsense guy with a reputation for being a bulldog in court. I laid out everything, hidden camera footage, dates, times, the works. Mr. Davidson, scanning through the evidence with keen eyes, finally looked up, his expression grim yet oddly satisfied. "Anna, we have a solid case here. Infidelity, theft, you want to go to court, you'll likely seek compensation. That's exactly what I want, I told him, my voice steady, my resolve like steel. We filed for financial compensation for the betrayal and initiated a police complaint against Jen for theft. The days that followed were a blur of legal documents, meetings, and statements. Amidst this whirlwind, word got out about the divorce and everything else. I braced for whispers, for pity, or worse, mockery at work. But it never came. Instead, there was an unexpected wave of support. But not everyone was supportive. One afternoon, as I was walking out of a meeting, I saw her, Martha, storming into the office like it was her own house, fury radiating off her in waves. "Anna, you think you can just destroy my family and get away with it?" she screamed across the lobby. The office fell silent. Everyone's eyes were on us. I stood my ground. "Martha, you need to leave. Now." She took a step forward, her finger pointed accusingly. "I won't let you do this to us." Before she could continue, I gestured to the security guards. "Please escort her out. She's not welcome here." The guards were quick to react, taking Martha by the arms and leading her away as she continued to shout and struggle. It was a sad, desperate scene. The following week saw the legal battles unfold. Mike, faced with undeniable evidence, settled out of court, agreeing to a lump sum as compensation. His face, when he signed the papers, was a mix of anger and humiliation. Jen, caught red-handed on video, received a conditional sentence and was ordered to return all stolen items. Adding to their downfall, Mike became a joke at work. People would subtly lift their noses as he passed, snickering about the man from the stinky house. It wasn't long before he couldn't take it anymore and resigned. His departure made my daily life a lot easier. Not seeing him every day was a relief I hadn't expected. It had been 2 quiet, peaceful months since I had settled into my new life and small apartment in the city center. My days were filled with the normalcy of work, occasional lunches with colleagues, and evenings that I could now call my own. It felt like I was finally getting back to myself, the air around me lighter, my mornings brighter. But, like a shadow from the past, my phone rang one afternoon. The screen flashed Martha's name, dragging with it the weight of old, unpleasant memories. I hesitated but answered, curious despite myself. "Anna, you need to help us." Martha's voice came through, strained and desperate. It was so different from the last time we spoke, filled with accusations and anger. "What's wrong, Martha?" I asked, though a part of me already wanted to hang up. "It's this house. It's falling apart. The smell is unbearable, and we can't even use the bathrooms properly because of the sewage issues. Mike's drowning in debt because of the repairs," she explained, her voice cracking. I paused, taking in her words. The schadenfreude was tempting, but I pushed it aside. "Martha, Mike chose that house. He refused a proper inspection. What did you expect?" "But, Anna, we didn't know. His girlfriend left him, and Jen, she's gone too, ran off with some guy, leaving her son behind. We're struggling," she continued, pleading now. I sighed, the old anger and frustration stirring in my chest. "Martha, Mike made his decision without thinking of the consequences. You all supported him then. I'm sorry, but you're on your own." I hung up before she could say anything else, cutting off the last thread that connected me to that part of my life. As I set my phone down, a wave of emotions washed over me. Pity, relief, liberation, it was a mix that left me both saddened and strangely empowered. I had moved on, literally and metaphorically. My new apartment, though smaller, was mine alone. I decorated it to my taste, filled it with plants, and every corner of it was stamped with my presence, my independence. That evening, I stepped out onto my small balcony, overlooking the bustling city streets. The air was crisp, and the city lights flickered like distant stars. It was my city, my life. I had fought hard for this peace, and I intended to enjoy every bit of it. Never again, I whispered to myself, a promise hanging in the cool air. Never again will I let anyone control my life. I turned back inside, feeling the solid ground of my decisions beneath my feet. The apartment was quiet, a sanctuary from the world and its chaos. It was a fresh start, a new chapter that I was writing on my own terms.
Had been stolen, which is proof of this. If it worked, it would be to his credit. If not, he could get rid of me, which would be a pain in his side. Very sly. I remained silent as my boss proceeded to chastise me. The manager did nothing but observe. Finally, he gave me my notice of transfer. You're being transferred. Demotion to a client-centered factory was the new task. I accepted the notice without question since I was so exhausted. After that, I looked up the location of my transfer and said, Alaska. There, is it not freezing? My remark caused the manager's veins to burst in his forehead and ended the stillness. Is that all you have to say? The manager then gave me an hour and a half of lectures. Man, this time of year, being seconded. How on earth did you accomplish that? When the factory manager came to see me, he laughed and said this while carrying the transfer notification. I mean, it was a strange time for a transfer. Anyone would think I did something wrong. The factory where I was posted was in the suburbs of Anchorage, Alaska. Being from Los Angeles, I detest the cold. It's freezing for me, even though it's the south of Alaska. There was no trace of summer at all, even though it was almost here. I'm excited to collaborate with you. I've been informed that I will oversee general affairs. Since I have experience in sales, I rely on your direction and rigorous education. Everyone applauded warmly as I bowed deeply and entered the office. I recall that when they responded, I felt relieved and my shoulders relaxed. I was given a room in an old apartment complex as company housing. I've heard that a large number of workers and students who are away from home reside here. The room next to me was occupied by a young man. I suppose he's quite the player since even though we've just said hello a few times, he always appears to be with a different woman. Perched on a hill, the apartment offers a distant view of the sea. The city lights are stunning at night, and my favorite thing to do after work is open a can of beer and enjoy the view from the balcony. I saw a few kids with paper lanterns in their hands today as I made my way back up the hill to the apartment. It was that fleeting moment in the day between dusk and dawn. I had the impression that I had entered a new dimension. It wasn't until I saw a big bamboo decoration in the daycare's playground halfway up the hill that I realized it was July 7, the day of the Star Festival. The kids are presumably attending a festival. I opened the door to my apartment, thinking that. I undid my necktie and went straight to the refrigerator to get a can of beer. I immediately stepped outside to the balcony and uncorked the drink. On the slope, paper lanterns were swaying in different directions. The children singing caught my attention as they sang about tassels on bamboo. It's the Star Festival. It had an odd vibe to it and sounded like a kid's song I've never heard before. It's not that horrible to learn little by little about the unknown parts of our region. That was the first time I had thought like that since my transfer. Someone was knocking on my door at that very moment. Nobody in this place knew me well enough to come see me. Without checking the intercom, I opened the door, assuming it was the landlord or the factory manager. A beautiful woman dressed in a robe stood in front of the door. She carried a paper lantern and was dressed in a robe of white and blue. She looked down shyly and sung in a soft, hesitant voice the song the kids had been singing before. For the Star Festival, bamboo, let's rejoice. Please, I need a candle. She buried her face in my chest and put her arms around my neck the next second. I hope she'll pardon me for putting my arms around her waist out of impulse when I'm hugged by a stunning woman in a robe that I just met. I'm shocked when she says, I want more than just a candle. I want your best, in a somewhat sultry voice. She's not someone I know, though, I assure you. I had to say something for her honor, and I said, I think you've got the wrong guy. I hope she'll forgive me for speaking louder than I meant to, but I was scared too. Aren't you, Jack? She looked up at me, actually seeing at my face for the first time, startled by my voice. Well, not at all. My name is Raymond, I said with a sardonic grin. It seems that she thought I was her boyfriend. In an instant, her face flushed beet red. I could see her long eyelashes trembling around her wide-open eyes up close. I apologize so much. It appears that I made a mistake, she said, pulling away from me in a hurry. At that precise moment, the door from the adjoining room opened, revealing a happy pair, with the young woman referring to the man as Jack. I realized then what was going on. The sight of the two of us froze the beauty in a robe. The man turned to face us, and she ducked into the front door of my flat to avoid his stare. She pushed me, and I crashed back against my front door. How strange fate is. I was knocked down and imprisoned by a stunning person at the entrance. I waited in silence as the noise of footsteps from the other room subsided in this state. The last pair's footsteps were eventually drowned out by the sound of an elevator door opening and the pitter-patter of tiny feet. I questioned her, softly pulling off her body. "Are you okay?" With a stunned expression, the stunning woman in her robe withdrew from me and took a seat. Her side profile was lovely, but a little depressing. "I apologize. In addition to making a mistake, I also started this annoyance. I truly wanted to take him by surprise." She apologized to me, lowering her head and gripping her robe tightly. One tear fell to the back of her tightly closed fist. I went to stroke her shoulder in an attempt to console her. But at that moment, the partially open front door flew open. "Star wishes on bamboo in honor of the Star Festival. Let's rejoice. Please give me a candle." Children dressed in robes were standing there, singing a joyful song and each holding a lantern. They extended their arms. All right," exclaimed the stunning woman dressed in a robe. She took out sweets from a plastic bag she carried and started giving them to the children. The kids gleefully rushed off toward the next house, carrying candies. It was uncannily similar to Halloween, and I watched the spectacle play out in silence. "Is this something like trick or treat?" I inquired with the attractive woman wearing a robe who was dropping off the kids. The robed beauty gave me a startled glance. She then spoke softly, as though knowing, "You're not from around here. This is a gathering for candles. Kids wander around houses like this on the day of the Star Festival in order to collect candy. The kids appear to be more interested in candies these days, but it seems like they used to really get candles back in the day." She held out her hand to me as she spoke. I was able to stand at last, thanks to her support. "I feel ashamed. I try my hardest, but it didn't work out," she remarked, appearing somewhat relieved. "I made an attempt because I've been told since high school that I'm not cute. Rather silly, huh?" The attractive woman in a robe appeared to be a neighbor I knew a little bit. I reasoned that perhaps he might pick me among the other women. I'd wanted to console her since I was feeling down, but I was at a loss for words. She smiled slightly at me while I remained silent. She then repeatedly apologized to me and gave me a gift of a mound of candies. I ought to have gotten her name. With a gentle chime, the elevator doors closed, and I was a little regretful. A week later, I saw the beautiful woman in a robe once more, this time at the manufacturing office. I didn't recognize her at first as she had changed so much in appearance. She introduced herself as, "I'm Alice Mitchell, the consulting attorney," as she put on her elegantly tailored black suit. The subtle yet expertly applied makeup looked great on her. Her lips were painted a delicate beige, but they were a charming pink when she wore a robe. "Thank you for the other day." When she whispered in a voice only I could hear, I had to look twice. She appears to be this factory's legal advisor. The plant manager says she's a very competent female lawyer who operates a law office close to the company residences. Alice approached me, startled by the sudden reunion, and said, "I wanted to apologize for the other day." You already know our friend," I replied. "Alice, pay attention. Alice has never been lucky when it comes to guys. She recently developed feelings for a young man. Having known Alice since she was a young child, the factory manager began to spread rumors about her personal life. Alice covered the manager's mouth with her palm in a panic to silence him. "You don't have to talk about that." Alice pouted at the manager of the plant, looking rather like a little child. She offered to apologize, and I chose to accept it. We decided to meet for supper and trade phone numbers. I realized that since coming here, I had never exchanged personal contact information before. I want to giggle thinking about our first meeting. I think she noticed that on my face. Alice, who was talking about her job, shot me a quick glance and said, "Don't." I shot her a sidelong glance of guilt. My heart was beating very strongly, and it felt like we were talking in private. Later, I got into a fight with Alice over food. It was a pleasant mood at first. Everything was going well until we had a little wine at this lovely Western restaurant on the harbor. I believe we were both feeling tipsy as the dinner was coming to a conclusion. I am not a good drinker. Although I don't think I have a nasty temperament when I'm intoxicated, I do have a tendency to express my genuine emotions a little. Do you like younger men? I asked Alice that out of the blue when she informed me she had split up with that man. The air around our table seemed to cool off by 2 degrees for a brief period of time. In spite of my impolite inquiry, Alice smiled maturely. What a rude man to ask something like that. She set her wine glass down on the surface. Our relationship's affected by age. However, isn't the man who lives next door a college student? Are you about 35 years old? Isn't that a little hazardous, Alice? I ran into the neighbor in the elevator the day following the disturbance, and we spoke briefly. The news that he was still a college student astonished me. Alice corrected me about her age. I'm only 32, her voice trembling. Are you serious? For a college student, there really isn't much of a difference between 35 and 32. It may look that both ages are old hags. It's true that alcohol can be frightening. I believe that at the moment I was merely attempting to get her attention. I kept pushing her boundaries with my remarks. It doesn't really help to regret it when you're sober, does it? I'm an old hag, but there's a big difference between 32 and 35. What in what way? Alice lost patience at that point. She glared at me as she got up from her chair. If you round up, there's a big difference between 30 and 40, you idiot. That's the point where my recollection stops. It seems like someone whacked me over the head with a baguette. I discovered the hard way that evening that even tough bread may be lethal. Alice has been ignoring me ever since that evening. She works at a legal office next to my apartment complex, and whenever she sees me on her way back, she turns to avoid eye contact. I'm trying to find the appropriate occasion to offer apologies, but I'm having trouble. I learned that my old main office coworkers were going to Anchorage around 6 months after I was moved to the plant. I was approached by an old coworker who proposed a meeting. It seems like they intended to come to this factory. I was excited to see my old coworkers, but my excitement was somewhat dashed when I learned that the former manager would also be there. The main office group arrived in Anchorage for their vacation a few days later. They also visited our factory, one of their suppliers, for a tour. It was good to see my former coworkers again, unaltered, and even solicited for advice regarding their jobs. I generally simply handled factory attendance, so everyone at the office was shocked to see me offering the elite guidance from the main office. Hey Raymond, you're remarkably trustworthy. Why were you moved to this location? I was graciously brought some Misty by the manufacturing manager. I gave a hazy response, saying that there were several reasons why things eventually cooled down. That day, Alice was also at work, and I could feel her watchful eyes. Hey Raymond, come here. My former manager was the one who was so haughtily summoning me over. At the office door, he was waving at me. I sighed heavily and rose to follow his urging. A long time has passed. I appreciate you being there the other day. A salutation with a tinge of irony. The former head of the section put on a pouting expression. It seems that he knew what he was doing. You haven't told anyone, right? In response to the manager's remarks, I gave a nod. The division head called me in and said the same thing when I was reassigned here and left the main office. I became tired of him always blaming me for turning the client over to my junior, even though it could have been his fault in the end. Maybe you didn't remember, but you gave me the instruction to give the client to my junior, right? Additionally, I've heard that you were the junior's mentor. The manager appeared taken aback, not anticipating a response from me. Seldom did he say, "You're speaking too loudly." You do understand that it would be problematic if someone heard, right? Panicking, the section head looked silly, and I couldn't help but laugh. A boss who installs his own subordinates and then gloats about it is not someone I need. That contract trouble, anyway, was your responsibility. You do realize that it has nothing to do with me. The section head abruptly ended the chat as my other employees who had completed the tour were congregating close to the office. I sighed heavily when I saw him re-enter the circle of the main company. I seemed to be harboring some residual affections for the headquarters. That was undoubtedly aided by being stimulated and re-establishing contact with former coworkers. A small part of me lamented not being able to go back to that circle. Alice was standing behind me and appeared to have been there for some time. I didn't mean to listen. It seems that she had heard me talking to the section head. Nevertheless, she declared, errors must be fixed. I've accepted that it's all in the past. I responded in a non-committal manner since I didn't want to deal with this matter once more. Alice gave me a worried look as she glanced at me. She looked at my face for a bit before letting out a tiny sigh. Are you aware of the facial expression you're making? You seem to be quite depressed. Would you please be truthful? I'd prefer not to see your face. Raymond Alice pointed it out, and I hardly touched my face. It humiliated me to be seen looking that way. It's the most uncool thing ever to pretend to be regretting something while still having given up. I'm acting like I have no residual sentiments, which is incredibly uncool. I told Alice how I really felt, covering my shaking mouth with my hand. It seemed impossible for me to lie to her. It's not a bad thing. It's acceptable to persist in pursuing your goals. Come back to where you belong. I'll assist you, Alice remarked, her words of encouragement beaming from her eyes. Saying thank you, I bowed my head. Leave it to me, she smiled in response. Then a string of busy days started. I gathered proof of the manager's misconduct with the help of my former coworkers. It turned out that not only had I been held accountable for his errors, but other coworkers had also had their successes taken advantage of. As we investigated every illegal detail, the accusations continued to mount. Alice worked hard to get the paperwork ready to file the manager's accusation. Alice looked at the petition my former coworkers had started calling for my return to the headquarters and said, "You're surprisingly popular despite being the kind of person who'd say such terrible things to me," looking surprised. It seems that she was still upset with me for what transpired that evening. I sincerely apologized for that moment. I drank too much because I felt anxious. I admitted, I got too intoxicated because I was anxious about spending time alone myself with you. Nervous about being with an old woman like me, she said with a giggle. I felt like Alice could look right through me. I took a big breath and looked up at her. That day, I really wanted to make a move on you, but I just couldn't say it. Alice smiled contentedly at what I had said. Then she abruptly ended the talk by saying, "We'll continue this later." My confession seems to have been ignored. Subsequently, the head office successfully accused. Alice was so happy to hear from me that she began saying, "I'm glad," over and over. I can now go back to the main office. That's excellent news, is it not? From my phone, I could hear Alice's voice with a trace of sadness. And with that, I decided. To cheer her up, I made the decision to board the final flight. I was eager to see Alice's face once more. I hurried to Alice's legal practice after grabbing a taxi at the airport. In the office, the lights were still on even though it was already late. I'm back. Alice had been working alone, overtime, when I knocked on her door at her law office. Wow, you've returned already. Greetings on your arrival back to headquarters. When will you return? Alice dropped the documents she was studying and began to spin her pen on her slender fingers. Her cheeks were flushed a little. Are you going to bring in a secretary? I believe I could perform the task fairly effectively. Startled, Alice let her pen fall to the ground. What? Why? How is the headquarters doing? I choose to be truthful with myself. I informed her that I had filed my resignation and turned down the invitation to go back to head office. All I want is to spend my entire life with you, Alice. Is that detrimental? There's no reason that would be bad. She gave a halting response. She probably showed me that it's okay to struggle toward the future you want, and that it's not something to be ashamed of. She also made me realize, for the first time in my life, how important it is to be true to yourself. Yes, but you're not hiring here. Forward your resume to the management of the factory. Her tone abruptly changed to one of business, and I missed the reddening of her cheeks. She is my eternal partner in life. I want the future to be one in which she is at my side no matter what, and I will stop at nothing to make that happen. It looked terrible, so I threw it away. I did that for you, I was confused by what was said. Haha. Mark Anderson, my employer, frequently harasses me and my staff. I had put up with it up until now, but this time I couldn't forgive him. Is it true that he tossed away the ugly-looking lunch that my dear wife had made for me? The vegetable-filled one, so pitifully impoverished. Eating such things won't make you stronger. A man ought to consume meat. It was for your own benefit. It's the end of your life, Mark replied. Mark went on without realizing my rage, and I told him icily that it was time to make him understand whose lunch he had thrown away. Why does the lunch my daughter made in the trash? I inquired. Daughter. Just then, a bystander, Chairman Hayes, went pale and came up to us. This aggressive boss's well-earned demise started with this incident, which marked a turning point in his career. I'm a 27-year-old employee named Jason. Sarah, my wife, is a stay-at-home mom. Last year, Sarah and I got married like any other couple. Sarah, you look cute today. Stop it. Every time I say cute, I can't help but think my wife, who is 3 years younger, is adorable. I think Sarah's hesitant smile is beautiful. I'd rather not go to work. Sarah is the one I want to be with. Jason, you have to go to work, you know. I unintentionally annoy Sarah by saying things like that. I sincerely appreciate how Sarah calms me down and sends me on my way. She made it possible for me to get to work. I made a delicious lunch, so do your best. Every time I whine about not wanting to go to work, Sarah gives me a freshly baked lunch. As always, thank you. I'd accept it and head out, saying, I'll look forward to lunch and do my best. To be honest, my feet hurt as I walk to work, but I do it for Sarah, who is waiting for me to get back. Actually, I was worried about something that I hadn't yet told my wife, Sarah. Go to work if you have time to spout gibberish. You guys are just good at working. The worst environment in the department has been brought about by the recently assigned Mark's harassment and sarcasm. Naturally, he would dump his own work on subordinates. After assigning irrational duties, he would yell, "Too slow. You're finished. Is there nothing you can do correctly?" The staff were experiencing emotional and bodily distress as a result of the constant harassment. Because of Mark's constant shouting, everyone was on edge. Here we were all, growing more and more worn out in such a setting. Jason, come here. I seemed to be the target today. Mark was going to give me an unreasonable reprimand. Jason, why haven't you prepared the materials for today's meeting? I was suddenly yelled at by Mark. Taken aback, I asked, Meeting materials? What was he talking about? I hadn't received any instructions to prepare such materials. Besides, I hadn't even heard about a meeting today. Being proactive is the basic principle of a working professional. Mark started spouting nonsense. Being proactive. If he thinks so, why couldn't he prepare it himself? How am I supposed to prepare for a meeting I didn't even know existed? Have the materials ready for the meeting starting at 1:30 p.m., he said. I checked the time. It was around 11 o'clock a.m. now. Looks like I would have to skip lunch break to get this work done. Reluctantly, I started working on the materials. This meeting required past documents, so I gathered what I needed and secluded myself in the records room. At 12:30 p.m., during lunch break, I thought I could just make it in time and return to my desk. What? It's gone. Why? But my precious lunch was missing. I searched in my bag, on my desk, and in the surrounding area, but the lunch was nowhere to be found. I definitely received it in the morning and came to work with it, so it couldn't just disappear. What are you looking around for, Jason? There was Mark, smirking as he approached me. Had you finished preparing the documents? I've gathered all the necessary materials, so I just need to put them together. Seemingly dissatisfied with my response, Mark clicked his tongue, but soon smirked again. Looking for something? My lunchbox is missing, I answered honestly when he asked. Oh, that. I threw it away. What? You threw it away? I involuntarily raised my voice in disbelief. What did he just say? He threw away my lunch. That pathetic lunch full of vegetables and looking poor. Eating that won't give you any strength. A man should eat meat. I did it thinking of your well-being, Mark said, smirking as he spoke. I was so angry I felt like I could explode. I could feel my clenched fists trembling. Your life is over, I thought. Huh. It was then, as I coldly confronted Mark, that someone interrupted. Excuse me for a moment. Oh, Chairman Hayes. Chairman Hayes walked in at that moment, his face ashen, and he was holding a wrapped item in his hand. I recognized the wrapping. It was the wrap for the lunchbox I had brought. That's my lunchbox. Thank you. Where did you find it? I asked as I received the lunchbox. It was in the trash can in the hallway. He really threw it away. Upon hearing Chairman Hayes' answer, I looked at Mark. Mark's face turned pale at the arrival of Chairman Hayes, but he tried to cover it up with a forced smile. Did you, by any chance, throw away Jason's lunch? For what reason? Jason always brings his lunch, but it always looks unappetizing, so I was worried. I thought it would be terrible if he fell ill eating such food. It's unfortunate if someone is bad at cooking, but it's better to make a lunch that looks more appealing. It was out of kindness, you see. Mark tried to justify his actions. An appetizing, bad at cooking. Such words reignited the anger I had been trying to suppress. It seemed Chairman Hayes felt the same way. As I was about to speak in anger, Chairman Hayes gestured for me to be quiet and began speaking calmly. It seems you have a sophisticated hobby of peeking into others' lunches and criticizing them. Chairman Hayes coldly uttered his sarcastic remark. Mark grimaced in response. He always eats it so proudly, it's hard not to notice. I would brag too if my beautiful, lovely, and wonderful wife woke up early in the morning to make me such a lunch. I found myself reflexively responding to Mark's words. That's how much I treasure Sarah. Be quiet, Chairman Hayes said, smiling kindly, signaling me to stop. Yes, sorry, I apologized internally. Then, Chairman Hayes turned his gaze back to Mark. What about Jason's lunch made you think it looked unappetizing? Little meat, mostly vegetables, the rice was brown, and it looked messy. Mark responded disparagingly to Chairman Hayes' inquiry. If Chairman Hayes hadn't been there, I might have punched him. I see. Then let me make something clear. Huh? Clear? Mark looked confused, obviously unaware that he had made an enemy of a significant person. The person who gets up early in the morning to make this lunch with all her effort is my daughter. Jason is my daughter's husband. Why is my daughter's lunch in the trash? Daughter. Mark stood dumbfounded as the truth was revealed. It's Sarah. I'm starting work here from today. Hello. I look forward to working with you. I met my wife, Sarah, when she joined the company as a new employee. She began working without revealing she was the chairman's daughter. I was assigned to be her mentor. Sarah, you're quick to learn. Is that so? Thank you. I took good care of her, not just as a mentor, but as a senior colleague. Sarah was a capable new employee and soon needed little help. Then, one time, Sarah made a mistake at work. This is my fault for not supervising properly. I apologized alongside her and worked hard to rectify the mistake. Eventually, we managed to fix it and celebrated our hard work. Jason, I'm really sorry for this time. It's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. As a new employee, just be careful not to repeat this same mistake. When you become a senior, help your juniors if they're in trouble. That's the secret to a successful company, as I was taught by my seniors. Later, I learned that Sarah was impressed by what I said that day. From then on, our relationship grew closer. Sarah, about this copy. Yes, what about it? It looks like you got the front and back mixed up. The paper came out blank. Oh, I'm so sorry. I always thought Sarah, who seemed competent yet somewhat naive and clueless about the world, needed someone to look after her. I found myself instinctively watching over her, ready to help at any moment. Sarah, you should drink more. Hey, seniors, don't just bother the young lady. Pay some attention to me too. At company drinking parties, I would shield Sarah from being pressured to drink too much, sometimes getting drunk myself in the process. Sarah grew fond of me and would report to me whenever something happened. Jason, I found a nice restaurant the other day. Would you like to go with me? If it's Sarah's recommendation, definitely. Our conversations ranged from work to personal matters. Our dinners progressed from a few times a month to once a week. Gradually, our relationship grew closer. Jason and Sarah really make a great couple. They only have eyes for each other. There's no room for anyone else. It's nice to be close, but don't make out at work. Before we knew it, we were an officially recognized couple within the company. Then one day, Chairman Hayes approached me. "You're Jason, right?" "Yes, that's me." "I need to talk to you. Come with me." Not understanding what Chairman Hayes wanted to speak with me about, I followed him, worried about what I might have done. "Dad? Dad?" I looked in the direction of the voice and saw Sarah. "Dad, what's going on? Do you need something from Jason?" "Yes, well, it's something that concerns Sarah as well. Come along." That was when I first learned that Sarah was the chairman's only daughter. Sarah is the chairman's daughter. I kept it a secret. I didn't want to be seen as the chairman's daughter. I wanted to work as a regular employee. I'm sorry for hiding it until now. She had apparently gone through the interview process without revealing her identity as the chairman's daughter, and thus she was hired as Sarah and assigned to my department. Indeed, if everyone knew she was the chairman's daughter, they would have treated her differently. I might have also cared for her in a different way. Sarah is an excellent employee who delivers results in her work regardless of being the chairman's daughter. Really, thank you. Well, she's a bit of a scatterbrain, though. That is, I'm trying to improve, but you didn't have to say that in front of my father. As I shared my honest opinion, Sarah smiled happily. I was drawn to her smile, even as I inadvertently said something extra. It was our usual banter, but this time it wasn't her colleagues who were nearby, but her father. Chairman Hayes, realizing this, looked at me with a stern expression. "It's too early for marriage. I won't allow it." I was stunned by Chairman Hayes' words. Indeed, I was aware of my feelings for Sarah, but Sarah and I are not dating. Huh. When they clarified that we weren't even dating yet, Chairman Hayes looked surprised. It turned out that there were rumors at the company that Sarah and I were about to get married, and Chairman Hayes had come to lay down the law after hearing them. In reality, our close interactions had led people to believe the rumors were true, so he had addressed the topic of marriage. But I do think Sarah is a wonderful woman, and I would like to date her. Seizing the opportunity, I declared my intentions to Chairman Hayes and then turned to Sarah. "Sarah, will you go out with me?" At first, Sarah looked surprised by my proposal. Ha ha ha. I've never seen someone propose in front of their parent before. She laughed. "Indeed, Jason, you're too much," Sarah said, bursting into laughter. I couldn't help but join her in laughter. "Fine, do as you like." Chairman Hayes finally gave in, seemingly disarmed by his daughter's reaction. Soon after, I received a positive response from Sarah, and we started dating. The fact that we weren't actually dating until then surprised many at the company. "You're giving off such a sweet vibe, and you weren't even dating," they would say. When I admitted it was all unconscious, my colleagues teased me mercilessly. After a while, we decided to get married. "It's too soon," Chairman Hayes exclaimed. Well, everyone said we were taking too long. Chairman Hayes was the only one opposed. "No matter if it's 5 years or 20 years, you're going to say the same thing, right? No matter how many years pass, Dad will always say it's too soon for marriage. If I listen to him every time, I'll never get married." Sarah and her mother brushed him off. Officially, I remember Chairman Hayes looking flustered and isolated. "I think Jason is a fine young man, but marriage might still be too soon," he said. "If you think he's a good person, then just accept it," Sarah's mother said. "If you're going to be so mean, I won't let you hold your grandchild," Sarah added. "That's well. There, you two," Chairman Hayes said, clearly flustered. I found myself stepping in to mediate. His wife sure is a strong person. My mother also had a way of keeping my father in check. Is it a case of strong mothers, perhaps? Anyway, after persistently appealing to Chairman Hayes, he finally gave his blessing for our marriage. Half a year later, we had our wedding. "If Dad had accepted sooner, we could have been married earlier," Sarah lamented. "It just shows how precious you are to him," I replied. "The company accepted us before your own father did." I occasionally have drinks with Chairman Hayes in private. It seems that intervening back then worked out in my favor. It's a relief. Women in my family are stronger than me, he commented during a drinking session. This helped me establish a reasonably close relationship with Chairman Hayes. Sorry, Jason, don't worry about it. Take your time learning. Sarah wasn't very skilled at household chores. Having lived at her parents' house all her life, where her mother, a homemaker, did all the household chores, Sarah never had to do them herself. She had only ever helped out a bit, and since I had a long history of living alone, I was actually better at housework. Thank you, but I feel bad leaving everything to Jason. I need to learn quickly, Sarah said. Despite this, Sarah earnestly began learning to manage the household. Even so, her cooking skills didn't improve much. Oh, it turned black again. Well, that's common at the beginning. Don't worry, let's try adjusting the heat a little next time. Thus, she practiced by getting up early to make lunch every morning. The lunch she handed me was the result of her efforts. Indeed, it was mostly vegetables, but the once messy dishes were now neatly arranged, and the once burnt omelette, though slightly crumbled, now looked appetizingly yellow. Sarah is improving day by day with her persistent efforts. Every day, she studies cooking and researches how to make it better. Knowing her efforts, I couldn't forgive Mark for his words. How can you say such things without considering the effort of the person who made it? What are you, some kind of critic? I said. Chairman Hayes also knew of his daughter's efforts in cooking. He mentioned buying her cooking books and recording videos of his wife cooking for her. She did not have any knowledge of housework, and he seemed to feel guilty about it. It was typical of Chairman Hayes to have kept her sheltered, not even letting her handle a knife because it was dangerous. She told me, I've improved, so I want Dad to try it too. I'm really looking forward to eating it, she said, genuinely excited about receiving her lunch. Someday, however, preparing lunch for two was still a burden for Sarah, who was not yet accustomed to cooking. Chairman Hayes himself didn't want to put undue pressure on her. Therefore, once a week, she made an extra portion for her father, which I delivered during my lunch break. Today wasn't one of those days, but he sometimes came by to check on us. He apparently found my lunchbox in the trash on his way here. I didn't know that. Upon hearing our story, Mark started to make excuses. You think just because you didn't know, it's okay to throw away someone's lunch. Chairman Hayes shouted at him. His loud voice drew the attention of everyone around. This is a good opportunity I have. Something to ask. Everyone was seizing the moment with the gathering crowd when Chairman Hayes addressed them. I heard Mark has been harassing Jason, a subordinate. Has anyone else been harassed by him or witnessed it? Speak up. Now's the time. The employees exchanged glances, unsure. I was pushed to do extra work by Mark, one employee said, as if having made up their mind. Following that, other employees also began to speak up, one after another. He made me run errands to the grocery store, and he didn't pay for it. He waged war on me right before leaving. Mark made me cover for his mistakes, one after another. Mark's wrongdoings came to light. Almost everyone there had experienced his harassment. They used the opportunity to voice their complaints to Chairman Hayes. So how will you explain this? Chairman Hayes asked. Mark glared at his subordinates, but he was outmatched, intimidated by their stares. Mark was pressured into silence. I too glared at him. Mark, hand over your work immediately and take a leave of absence. Your punishment will be decided later, Chairman Hayes declared. Mark knelt down on the spot, utterly dumbfounded, hanging his head in defeat. No one approached or spoke to him in that moment. Afterward, he left the scene as if his soul had departed from him. I picked up the lunchbox that had been thrown in the trash. Fortunately, the lunchbox, wrapped in a cloth, wasn't dirty. Relieved, I sat at my desk and opened the lunchbox. Let's eat, I said, and I began to eat. Jason, Chairman Hayes, and the other employees looked at me in surprise. I smiled at everyone. It's fine. I don't want to waste what my wife made because of such nonsense. With that, I continued eating my lunch. Yes, the lunch Sarah had worked hard to make was truly delicious. Haha, you really are something. Chairman Hayes watched me with a smile. His smile seemed to spread to the other employees as they, too, chuckled softly. "Welcome home," Sarah greeted me with a smile when I got home. "I heard you had a tough day. Well done." "You know about it?" I was a bit surprised at her remark. "Your father called and told me everything." "Thank you for eating the lunch," she said. According to Sarah, Chairman Hayes had called her and explained everything about Mark and how I ate the lunch that was once thrown away. He also said, "You married a good man." I was taken aback by those words. Chairman Hayes, a man shy of praise, would never say such things directly to me. That's great. I couldn't hide my joy at receiving such rare praise from my father-in-law. I hope he's starting to recognize me a bit. I placed my hand on Sarah's belly. I need to work hard as a father, too, I muttered to myself. There was a tiny life growing inside Sarah's belly. In fact, we were expecting twins. She had severe morning sickness and was at risk of a miscarriage, so she had quit her job. Mark had been assigned to the company after she had resigned. Now, in this stable period, she wanted to move her body and was actively doing housework. I worry about her, but I also believe it's important not to be overly protective, so I let her do things her way. Thank you, as always, Sarah. I'm the one who should be thanking you. I'm truly grateful to my wife for making lunches every day, especially considering her condition during pregnancy. When I express my gratitude, Sarah responds with a smile. Her cooking skills are still a bit shaky, but they're improving. What happened, Sarah? I think I got the water ratio wrong. The rice is all mushy. We could cook it again, but let's make it into porridge this time. Sometimes she still gets the rice-water ratio wrong. After dinner, we enjoy a quiet, peaceful time together. I wonder how much cuter they will be when they are born, considering how adorable they are now. As I laugh, Sarah laughs too. It's going to be tough, but that also means twice the cuteness and happiness today. Twice the fun and joy too. We talked about various things for our future. I thought it was a very happy time. I believe our future will surely be a happy one. Meanwhile, Mark faced a grim fate after the incident. Mark was judged to be malevolent and demoted to a branch office. That branch was rumored to have a heavy workload, and he had to start new from the bottom. But since he had always dumped his work on his subordinates, he was nearly incompetent himself. He resigned after being mentally weakened by daily scolding from a younger boss and the intense workload. The mistreatment he had meted out to his subordinates came back to haunt him. It was a fitting example of reaping what you sow. Chairman Hayes was determined to prevent Mark from ever facing us again, so I likely never saw him again. Incidentally, I was appointed to fill the now vacant managerial position. If Jason is the boss, we can feel secure. Thank you. I'll do my best. I plan to take lessons from Mark's example and cherish my subordinates. With his departure, the atmosphere in the department improved significantly. Everyone could work more energetically without fear. However, I'm now in a position of responsibility. There is a weight to it, but I can overcome it, thanks to Sarah's lunches, which she prepares while waiting for my return. Sarah, you did so well. We have cute and healthy twins. Time passed, and Sarah safely gave birth to twins. They were a boy and a girl, both incredibly cute. Both sets of grandparents came to celebrate the birth. They were absolutely adorable. My parents complimented how cute the twins were and comforted Sarah. They also advised me to support Sarah firmly. Chairman Hayes was completely enamored with his grandchildren. His wife, while comforting Sarah, had a bittersweet smile on her face. Dad, Sarah seemed a bit overwhelmed by her father's reaction. I smiled, feeling blissful. I'm happy with my family. I'm really glad that these people are my family. Let's name them Nathan and Emily. Yes, let's give them lots of love. Sarah, and I want to show our children the same love our parents showed us. We want to play a lot with them, learn a lot together, and create many memories. We want to shower them with love every day so they can always be happy and smiling. I think that's also a way of showing filial piety. From now on, Sarah, Nathan, Emily, and I will create a family full of laughter. Just like our parents and in-laws showered us with love, we will pour our love into these children. As I say this, our parents nod with smiles. I can truly feel how happy I am right now. I want to firmly protect this happiness. When I go to work, everyone congratulates me. When I inadvertently show them photos of the kids, everyone says how cute they are. Odd. Don't brag about their cuteness at work. Okay, Jay. Especially since Mark left. You've been bragging about how cute your wife is. I'm sorry about that, I reply with a wry smile. Right, I should restrain myself from now on. With Mark gone, the atmosphere became warm enough to joke around. In this environment, I'll work hard for Sarah and our 2 children. I'm home. Welcome back. Returning home, I'm greeted by the 3 of them. At home, I'm actively involved in childcare. Taking care of twins is indeed twice as hard, but the joy is also double. During the day, both Sarah's mother and my mother often come to help. We're really grateful for their help. That's true, but as a dad, I need to take care of them too. Don't overdo it. You're working hard too. Don't overdo it yourself, Sarah. We chit-chat while changing diapers. As a couple, we need to work together. By the way, our fathers are also helping out a lot. They actively hold and comfort the babies. Moreover, they bring so many things when they visit that we hardly have to buy anything ourselves. Oh, look. More diapers have been bought. Yes, your father brought them with both hands full. I'm truly grateful. But it's a bit weird how much they dote on the grandkids. Sarah is still quite strict with her father. I understand the feeling of doting, and maybe I should have a chat with him about it sometime. They really are adorable. Truly, I wonder what kind of adults they'll become. Our beloved children sleep peacefully. Together with Sarah, I gently stroke them. I want to protect them. I truly felt this from the bottom of my heart. Our little ones are still fragile. Their future holds countless possibilities. They might become salarymen like me, or perhaps athletes or doctors. The possibilities for their future are endless. I want to do what's necessary to protect their future. But they're surely going to be kind children because you, Jason, are kind. And if they take after me, they might be a bit clumsy. That's not true. If they're like Sarah, they'll be strong-willed, though maybe a bit absent-minded. Oh, I've gotten much better than before. Sarah laughs at my words, and her smile brightens up. I think about how we should continue to support each other and laugh together as a family.
My name is Amy. Currently, I live in my husband Bob's family home. Bob is always busy with work and is often away on business trips. As a result, he is seldom at home, and I live with my mother-in-law and our 3-month-old daughter. Bob's father had already passed away. There used to be another person in our household, Bob's sister, but she had to move out due to her job. Bob's sister was always kind to me, so I liked her. It was sad when she left, but there was another reason why I wanted her to stay. My mother-in-law, named Karen, keeps harassing me. "Hey, Annie, what are you doing?" "The brat is crying." "Go comfort her quickly," she said, pointing at my daughter. Could you please stop referring to her as a brat? She's your granddaughter." "So what? I hate the sound of a crying child. Just do what I said. Comfort the brat." So I had to interrupt my chores and comfort my daughter. But then, if I don't progress with the housework, she'll be upset about that too. Finally, when my daughter fell asleep, I resumed my work, but then Karen started berating me again. "Stop letting the baby sit on the floor. It's in the way." "Well, but you were the one who said not to spend money on a bulky crib that she'll outgrow soon. Then carry the baby on your back. Just stop letting her sleep on the floor. It's so inconvenient." During the day, with Karen shouting like that, my daughter woke up again. Reluctantly, I picked up my daughter and carried her on my back while I continued with the chores. By 3 months, the baby starts to get quite heavy, and carrying her on my back is a significant burden. Given that I had to do housework in such conditions, my work speed slowed down considerably. Somehow, I managed to finish all the chores by dinner time, but Karen was relentless. "How can you be an unfit housewife if you spend all day and not make much progress with the housework? If I were younger, my mother-in-law would have slapped me, and she was abusive to me again. I was mentally exhausted. After putting my daughter to bed late in the night, I reached out to my husband. So your mom is being completely unreasonable. I see. I'm sorry I can't be there for you. Apologies, I have a meeting coming up. I'll hear more from you later. That's what my husband said before he hung up. My husband Bob seems busy too, and I can't really depend on him. I have to stand up to my mother-in-law Karen on my own, but I feel utterly helpless by myself. One night, my 3-month-old daughter's crying was exceptionally terrible. Maybe she was hungry or something was bothering her. In any case, she was wailing nonstop. Karen, waking up in irritation, stormed in. "It's so noisy. Shut that brat up. Do you even know what time it is? It's 11 p.m. It's not too late yet." "Shut up. I usually sleep at this time, don't you know? I can't stand her wailing. Do something now." The angrier Karen gets, the more it scares my daughter, causing her to cry more. I understand. Please calm down a little. When you raise your voice, it makes the baby cry even more. Don't order me around. I'm the one giving orders here. If you can't quiet her in 5 seconds, I swear I'll hit that baby. What? No way. 1, 2, 3. Indeed, Karen started counting. I want to believe that she would never resort to such inhumane behavior as kidding a 3-month-old baby, but the fact that I can see her doing it is what's terrifying. 5. It seems she's not stopping. Can't be helped. She then readied her fist. No, you're kidding, right? But my mother-in-law wasn't joking. I can't stand the wailing. Be quiet. And then Karen really did raise her fist to my daughter. I screamed out in disbelief. I never thought she would resort to violence. My daughter was screaming louder than I'd ever heard. Ah, enough of this noise. Shut her up now. Karen seemed completely oblivious to the fact that this was all happening because she had hit my daughter. My daughter ended up with a bruise on her face, and I immediately called for an ambulance. The doctor came and examined my daughter. "Doctor, how is she?" "My daughter?" "Your daughter is—" The doctor paused, and my mind went to the worst possible outcome. "You're joking." "No, I apologize for the confusion. Your daughter is fine. There might be a bruise, but it'll likely heal without leaving a mark. So please don't worry." Oh, thank God. I felt a wave of relief wash over me and my strength drain away. But what happened? Did she fall or something? No, nothing like that. It's just my mother-in-law who lives with us. She did something unimaginable. Could you tell me more about that? With that, someone entered the examination room. I recognized this person who would help me out of my current situation. The next day, I returned home with this person. Oh my, you ended up spending the night in the hospital? Quite the life you lead, neglecting your housework as a housewife. Karen taunted me with a smirk. I was seething inside. What's with your attitude? You sure had no qualms about doing such a terrible thing to my daughter. I showed Karen my quiet but resolute anger. Huh? What's with the attitude? Got a problem? Of course I have a problem. You did something so horrible to my daughter. Apologize. No, when I raised my voice, Karen yelled back. What the hell? Don't you dare talk back to me. I'm your mother-in-law, you know. A daughter-in-law doesn't dare defy her. Karen's face went beet red. But I did not back down and stared Karen down. You're getting on my nerves. Don't you dare oppose me. Saying that, Karen hit me this time. You just raised your hand, didn't you? Huh. Raising your hand means you're ready, right? Ready for whatever comes next, whatever might happen to you. At my words, Karen was taken aback. But what are you saying? What do you plan to do? Because of what Karen said, I called someone over. Please come in. Upon that invitation, the person who entered was my sister-in-law, Rebecca. Rebecca, why have you come back? I heard Amy's baby had to be rushed to the hospital, so I came as fast as I could. What on earth are you doing to Amy and the baby, Mom? Rebecca was quite furious. Seeing Rebecca so upset, even Karen seemed taken aback. And of course she would be. After all, Rebecca is a lawyer. Don't tell me you're going to do something as a lawyer just because I might have lost my temper. Karen trembled as she said this. What are you talking about? It's obvious we'll sue, right? I've already told Rebecca that. What? What are you thinking? There's no way I'll allow that. Hearing the word sue, Karen burst out shouting. I'm the one who wants to shout. I feel like I've aged dramatically from the scare of thinking my daughter's life was in danger. Mom, there were clear marks on the baby. It's clearly an assault, and you also just physically threatened Emmy, didn't you? You could be charged with battery for that. Hold on, this is just a little family communication. To sue over something like this, don't you think it's a bit hasty? Despite Karen's desperate excuses, I wasn't having any of it. Don't say such nonsense. Can't you see I'm angry? If you're not planning to apologize, I'm just going to proceed with legal action. Wait, at that time I was just a little frustrated. You know how people get irritable when they're tired, right? And when I could hear the wailing all night, it was just too much. Karen was making excuses, but that doesn't make it okay for her to resort to violence. Mother-in-law, it's unfortunate, but I don't plan to forgive someone who just makes excuses like this. I'm going to take legal action immediately, and I'm not intending to negotiate a settlement. Wait, stop. First of all, stop suing me. Do you realize how much I've helped you? Suddenly, Karen started claiming she had helped me. Amy, has Mom ever helped you? No, not at all. Rather than helping, mother-in-law has only been a hindrance and even criticizing my housekeeping. I see, and she's talking about having helped. I wonder what she's talking about. Rebecca and I gave Karen a cold stare. I said I helped you, didn't I? Why are you looking at me like that? I did help Emmy. When Emmy was tired and sleeping, I quietly did some housekeeping. Ah, could it be that you're the one who's been waking up in the middle of the night to snack? I wish you'd stop. It's really bothersome. What? I left some for your breakfast, didn't I? That's just my kindness. That's not what I call kindness. You're just handing me your leftovers, and it was too little to be called breakfast. Plus, you left the dishes without washing them, so it actually made my chores even more difficult. Mom, that's just terrible. Rebecca was appalled at Karen's actions. Hey, don't look at me like that. I have my own troubles too, you know. Well, troubles? Like what exactly? The truth is, I'm well aware of my own harmful behavior. Karen surprisingly admitted this. You're aware of your harmful behavior. You know, I tend to lash out when I get mad. I understand that it's not right, so I want to change this habit. But people can't always change as easily as they want. Even if I keep telling myself how bad it is, I just can't control myself. Karen continued speaking through her tears. At this rate, I might end up hurting even those I care about the most. Emmy, I need you to help me reform. You can tie me up if you need to. Do whatever it takes to make me repent. Karen even ended up prostrating herself. Wait, please calm down, mother-in-law. I think we should talk this through first. Just talking isn't enough to apologize to you. Be stricter with me. Otherwise, I just can't forgive myself for. Karen was genuinely crying, and it seemed she was truly remorseful. Thinking this, I was about to forgive Karen, but then... Amy, don't be fooled. What? Whenever she's in a tight spot, Mom plays the victim to stop being blamed. This is her usual tactic. Even if she does it in front of her own daughter, she can't hide her scheme. What? What are you talking about? I have no idea. I would never think of such a thing. This is just... But Karen was clearly flustered. Looking closer, even though she was crying so much just moments ago, her tears had already dried. She must have been pretending to cry. I can't believe it, mother-in-law, to go to such lengths to evade responsibility. Wait, hold on. I wasn't trying to run away from my mistakes. I just wanted to voice my feelings. Karen was trying to make yet another weak excuse. There's no way such an excuse would work on me. Please, enough with this, mother-in-law. I'm tired of your complaints. All I'm going to do is proceed with legal actions. My mind is made up. As I said that, Karen's face turned beet red with rage. How dare you? Why should I have to hear such things from you? Do you think I'll just sit by while you take legal actions against me? Although Karen was shouting those words, another person entered the house. Amy, is our daughter all right? It was my husband, Bob. He heard that our daughter had been rushed to the emergency room, and he bowed to his boss and was allowed to come home temporarily. But Bob, why are you home? Mom, that's not what matters right now. I heard you hit our daughter. How could you? I won't forgive this. Bob was shaking with anger. It was natural. as the daughter he cherishes was subjected to violence. Look, wait a moment, Bob. Why do I have to be told such things? I didn't do anything wrong. No, you clearly did something wrong. If you don't think violence is wrong, you are seriously misguided, mother-in-law. Why don't you stop making excuses? You're alone, but there are 3 of us, Bob, Rebecca, and me. You can't possibly get your way. How dare you? Are you trying to intimidate me by outnumbering me? Isn't that what they call tyranny of the majority? No, it's not about the tyranny of the majority. It's just that we all agreed to discipline you because you've clearly committed wrongdoing. It's okay if you're under the illusion that you're not wrong, but please stop causing us trouble. As I clearly said those words, Karen began to cry again. It seemed that this time her tears were real. What? Why has it come to this? What on earth have I done? I didn't do anything wrong. Please forgive me. Karen was looked upon with cold eyes by Bob and Rebecca. They must be feeling incredibly sad inside as their real mother is such a mess. Mom, I always thought you were strange, but I never thought you would be this bad. I no longer consider you as my mother. Neither do I. I'm ashamed to consider such a person as my mother. What? Wait a minute. What are you saying? You're the children I gave birth to after bearing a lot of pain. How dare you speak to me in such a way? Even as Karen was crying and shouting, the 2 of them continued to give her a cold stare. Let's just leave, Amy. I know a cheap motel we can live in for a while. In the meantime, I'll proceed with the legal actions against Mom. There's also suspicion of assault and battery, so we have to call the police. Police? Don't call the police. I've been telling you I didn't do anything wrong. Why has it come to this? Even as Karen cried and shouted, I did as Rebecca said and left the house. I hid out for a while in a budget hotel that Rebecca had recommended and left the rest up to her. After that, it seems Karen was charged with assault and battery and ended up in jail. Bob and I saw this as an opportunity to find a new home, and we ended up leasing an apartment. Now, our daughter, Bob, and I are living peacefully in our new apartment. Rebecca, who helped me so much, is reportedly having fun, despite her busy life as a lawyer. When Karen got out of jail, she had no choice but to return to an empty house. It's quite pitiful since we haven't told her where our apartment is. There's no way she can come over. Even if she were to find out, there's a security guard at the entrance, so even if she showed up, she'd just be taken away as a suspicious person.
My name is Charlotte, and I was raised in a tiny town where everyone was acquainted with one another. Elizabeth, my sister, is just a year older than I am, and I honestly felt we were rather close when we were kids. Both of our parents worked long hours at the nearby plant and were industrious people. Although we weren't wealthy, we managed to get by. Our grandparents' Sunday meals were the true highlight of our weeks. We lived next door to Mom's folks. There was something unique about those dinners. Grandpa would regale us with tales of the past while Grandma would prepare a feast. Sitting at their large wood table, surrounded by the aroma of home-cooked food and the coziness of family, I always enjoyed those get-togethers. Even in those days, Elizabeth was always more preoccupied with her phone than the family chat. She would mutter to me, "God, these dinners take forever," while browsing her social media accounts beneath the table. I could be hanging out with my friends right now. Before we knew it, Elizabeth was leaving for college to study management. Time passed quickly. Dressed to the nines and sharing flawlessly filtered images on Instagram, she was all about the glossy life. A year later, I followed her, but I took a different route. Design is what I choose to study. Both of us were able to attend respectable public universities, thanks to our parents' savings. They weren't particularly upscale, but they were reliable institutions that would provide us with a quality education. Mom would proudly say, "Your sister is going to be a successful businesswoman, and Charlotte, well, she's always been good with her hands." At the time, I didn't mind the analogy. I was too preoccupied with developing my passion for design, thinking of making beautiful things, and scribbling bridal gowns in the corners of my notebooks during lectures. I had no idea how drastically our careers would diverge or how one family meal would alter everything. I can see now that the symptoms were present from the start. I was happy working in the background, but Elizabeth was always vying for attention. However, neither of us realized how our decisions would ultimately cause our family to fall apart when our grandparents invited us all to a special supper following graduation. Even though the restaurant was full that night, my attention was solely on the envelope Grandpa was carrying. The entire family became quiet as he cleared his throat and got to his feet. "Elizabeth, Charlotte," he exclaimed in a passionate tone. "Your grandma and I have seen you both mature, get college degrees, and become into stunning young ladies. We wish to assist you in getting off to a good start in life." He gave an envelope to each of us. $50,000 is available for each of you. Make good use of it. My water almost swallowed me. $50,000. I have never seen that much money in my life. Elizabeth, however, didn't even wait for dessert before making plans. She declared, "I'm opening an exclusive clothing store," while surfing through her phone. "Upscale labels and designer selections. It will be incredible. Have you done any market research?" Recalling her business management lessons, I inquired. She gave an eye roll. "I know what sells. Charlotte, please. This is going to be massive, I promise you." Elizabeth was off and running in an instant. She rented this absurd apartment in the priciest area of town, the type where you feel underdressed simply by passing the windows. Her Instagram was overflowing with fresh content every day. Elizabeth calling herself a youthful CEO establishing her empire, posing in high-end clothing, and attending business meetings. She once told me, "Look at this marketing campaign I'm launching," while displaying the thousands of dollars she was spending on social media advertisements. "The greatest sales team in town has been hired by me. We will be the upcoming big thing." I took my time in the interim. I ran figures, created spreadsheets, and conducted research for weeks. My dreams have never been the same. In want to be a part of someone's special day, I decided to make wedding gowns. I discovered this little, unpretentious area with promise and wonderful natural light. I designed the layout myself, including a welcoming waiting room for brides and a comfy workstation. I contacted Maria, a fantastic seamstress I'd known for years, and who knew more about bridal gowns than anybody else in the community. As we prepared the studio, she said, "Charlotte, this could really work. I know how to make your sketches come to life, and you have a great eye for design." I also gave my best buddy from design school, Sarah, a call. "Want to contribute to the happiness of some brides?" I questioned her. She was on board right away. We began modestly, using only a basic website and a few local flyers instead of elaborate advertising efforts. Her cousin, who had visited our studio and appreciated how intimate it seemed, was our first bride. After that, her buddy and her friend's sister arrived. Through word of mouth, we began to establish a reputation gradually. One day, Elizabeth walked by and stated, "You're doing this all wrong. Where is your approach to social media? How do you position your brand? You must have a more expansive perspective." However, my thoughts were different, not larger. Every bride was exceptional, and every dress we created was one of a kind. I spoke with actual ladies and listened to their fantasies about their ideal wedding gown as Elizabeth posted about being a girl boss in her fancy clothes. The first year was tough but rewarding. We started with simple designs at reasonable prices, just trying to get our name out there. I remember our first $1,000 dress. The bride hugged me so hard after the final fitting, I thought she might never let go. "Charlotte, you've made my dream come true," she said, twirling in front of the mirror. Word spread quickly after that. By the second year, we were getting more elaborate requests. "Can you do hand beading? Is it possible to add custom lace?" Of course we could. Maria's skills were incredible, and Sarah had a real talent for details. We started doing bridesmaid dresses too. It just made sense when brides kept asking. Meanwhile, Elizabeth's Instagram posts were getting desperate. The designer clothes in her photos were the same ones over and over. Her exclusive store was empty most days. I'd walk past sometimes and see her sitting alone at the counter, scrolling through her phone. Then one day, Mom called me in tears. "Your sister's in trouble, Charlotte. She's losing everything." Elizabeth had blown through the entire $50,000 in loans she'd taken out. Expensive rent, unsold inventory, the massive advertising campaigns, it all caught up with her. Her empire collapsed in just 3 years. "I don't understand," she sobbed at a family dinner. "I did everything right. I had the perfect location, the best brands. Everything except actually running a business, I thought, but kept my mouth shut." She looked so different now. No more designer clothes, no more perfectly staged photos. Depression hit her hard. That's when Mom and Dad started their campaign. "Charlotte, honey, Mom began one evening at their house. Your sister needs a job, and you need a manager. It's perfect. She could help you expand the business." The pressure was constant. Elizabeth started showing up at the studio unannounced, critiquing everything from our booking system to our window display. "You really should be more active on social media," she'd say, or "This space is too small for a successful business." Finally, during yet another family dinner where they were all ganging up on me, I snapped. "Are you kidding me?" I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Elizabeth couldn't keep her own business afloat for 3 years. She burned through $50,000 in loans on Instagram ads and designer clothes. She never did market research, never tracked inventory properly, never built real relationships with customers. And now you want her to manage my business. Elizabeth's face crumpled. "You think you're so much better than me, don't you?" "No, I just think you're a terrible businesswoman. You can't manage my studio. You couldn't even manage your own store." The silence that followed was deafening. Elizabeth burst into tears and ran from the room. Mom was shaking with anger. "How dare you speak to your sister that way?" Dad thundered. "After everything she's been through?" "Everything she's been through." I grabbed my purse. "You mean everything she did to herself?" "I'm done. Done with the guilt trips, done with the pressure, done with all of it." I walked out that night, and I haven't been back since. 3 years of hard work building my business, and my family wanted to hand it over to the person who'd proven she couldn't handle it. 3 years can change a lot. My little studio wasn't so little anymore. We'd expanded into the space next door, hired 2 more seamstresses, and had a waiting list months long. Our dresses now started at $8,000, and nobody blinked an eye. Quality speaks for itself. "Charlotte, we need to raise our prices again," Maria told me one morning. "We're turning away too many brides." She was right. Between her masterful sewing, Sarah's eye for detail, and my designs, we'd built something special. Each dress was a work of art, and word had spread far beyond our little town. I was reviewing some sketches when the message popped up on my phone. "Elizabeth." My stomach did a weird flip when I saw her name. We hadn't spoken since that night at our parents' house. "No, hi, no, how are you? Just, I'm getting married in 2 months, and I need a wedding dress. Can you do it?" I nearly dropped my phone. Elizabeth getting married? Last I'd heard, through Mom's occasional updates, which I never asked for, but got anyway. She was working some office job and still living in her old apartment. 2 months. I typed back. "Elizabeth, we usually need 5 to 6 months for a custom dress. There's a whole process, multiple fittings, adjustments." Her response came immediately. "Come on, Charlotte, we're sisters. Or are you too successful now to help your own family? Must be nice being so successful you can turn away your own sister." I stared at the message for a long time. The old Charlotte would have fired back something nasty, but I'd grown up a lot in 3 years. "Let me check my schedule," I wrote instead. I spent that night reworking our entire production timeline. We had a bride, Jessica, whose dress was scheduled to start next week. I'd have to call her and explain we couldn't take her order after all. "I'm so sorry," I told Jessica the next morning. "I know this is unexpected. I'd like to give you this custom veil as an apology. It's one of our best pieces, and I have a colleague who does beautiful work. She can make your dress exactly as we planned." Jessica was disappointed but understood. I shifted 3 other dresses around, knowing we'd be working overtime for a week. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked when I told her about Elizabeth's dress. After everything that happened, I wasn't sure. But I replied to Elizabeth's message, "Okay, I'll make your dress. Come in next Tuesday at 10 a.m. for measurements." The response was just, "Great. Make it good." No thank you. No acknowledgement of the massive favor I was doing her. Just entitlement, same as always. But something made me want to do this. Maybe curiosity, maybe hope, maybe just the chance to prove something to myself. When Elizabeth came in for her first appointment, I decided to do something I'd never done before, offer a family discount. "The dress you want would normally be $10,000, I explained, showing her my sketches. "But I'll only charge you for materials and seamstress time, $5,500. Elizabeth barely glanced at the price. "Oh, that's fine. Richard, my fiancé, can easily afford it. He's loaded, owns half the commercial real estate downtown." That was the beginning of what felt like an endless stream of fittings and alterations. Elizabeth was in the studio constantly, always wanting to tweak something about the dress. "The neckline needs to be lower," she'd say one day. "No, higher the next. Can we add more beading, different lace, more sparkle?" At first, it was exhausting, but gradually, something shifted. Between fittings, Elizabeth would plop down on our plush consultation sofa, kick off her shoes, and talk, and talk, and talk. "Richard's such a bore," she'd say, rolling her eyes while Maria pinned her hem. "All he does is talk about business and golf. But his bank account," she'd make a chef's kiss gesture, "makes up for everything." I kept my face neutral, focusing on adjusting a seam. "You don't think that might be a problem?" "Please, you know what's a problem. Being broke. Besides, you should see his family." Elizabeth lowered her voice conspiratorially. "His sister goes to therapy twice a week." Like, how much end up do you have to be? The gossip was endless. Richard's mother was trying too hard to stay young. His father was probably having an affair with his secretary. Her friends weren't spared either. She had a nickname for each one, usually focusing on their insecurities or failures. "Jenny Bad Botox Miller is going to be so jealous of this dress," she'd laugh. "And Sarah Forever Single Thompson. She's going to die when she sees me walking down the aisle." I should have been put off by all of it. The old me would have called her out and started another fight. But something held me back. Maybe it was the way she'd automatically reach for my hand when she saw herself in the mirror, or how she'd bring me coffee, remembering exactly how I liked it when she came for fittings. Small moments like these made me think, maybe, just maybe, we were finding our way back to being sisters. The gossip made me uncomfortable, and her attitude toward her fiancé worried me. But wasn't this what I'd wanted? A chance to repair our relationship. So I nodded and smiled, letting her chatter fill the studio while the dress took shape under my hands. With each fitting, each coffee, each shared memory, I felt the wall between us crumbling just a little bit more. Things were looking up. Elizabeth and I even reconnected on social media. Suddenly, my feed was full of her engagement photos and wedding planning updates. She'd tag me in posts about the dress, always with lots of heart emojis and "best sister ever" captions. Mom called me one evening, sounding happier than she had in years. "I'm so glad you girls worked things out," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "This is all we ever wanted, you know. Our family back together." Dad even stopped by the studio one day, awkwardly hovering near the entrance before pulling me into a tight hug. "We missed you, kiddo," he mumbled into my hair. It felt good, really good, like maybe the past 3 years of silence had been worth it if this was the result. A week before the wedding, Elizabeth called me. "The dress is ready, right?" she asked, excitement bubbling in her voice. "I'm having my bachelorette party tomorrow night at Moonlight Bar. Can you bring it? I want all my girls to see it." The next evening, I carefully packed the dress into our nicest gift box, the one with our studio's gold logo embossed on cream-colored paper. I'd spent countless hours on this dress. The hand-beaded bodice, the delicate lace overlay, the subtle shimmer in the train. It was some of my best work. The taxi dropped me off at Moonlight Bar, and I could hear the party before I saw it. Laughter and music spilling out onto the street. Inside, a group of women in matching Team Bride t-shirts crowded around tables decorated with pink balloons and scattered rose petals. Elizabeth squealed when she saw me. "Girls, girls, the dress is here." They gathered around as I carefully lifted it from the box. The reaction was everything a designer could hope for. Gasps, sighs, a few tears. "Elizabeth, it's absolutely gorgeous. I've never seen anything like it. The detail work is incredible. Your sister is so talented." The dress made its rounds, each bridesmaid taking turns holding it up and admiring different aspects. I felt proud, not just of the dress, but of this moment, standing here with my sister, sharing in her happiness. When the dress was safely back in its box, I grabbed a glass of wine from the bar and found an empty chair at one of the tables. The night was young, the mood was festive, and for the first time in years, I felt like I truly belonged in my sister's life again. I was just getting comfortable, taking my first sip of wine, when I felt a harsh tug on my arm. Elizabeth stood over me, her perfectly made-up face twisted into an expression I knew all too well from our childhood, pure disdain. "What do you think you're doing?" she hissed, her manicured nails digging into my arm. "Having a drink," I said, confused. "Celebrating with you." Elizabeth let out a sharp, cruel laugh that made several heads turn. "Celebrating with me? Oh, honey, you're not a guest here. You're the seamstress. You delivered the dress, now it's time for you to go." The wine glass nearly slipped from my hand. "What ladies?" Elizabeth announced to the room, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Charlotte isn't joining us. She's just the dressmaker I hired. You know, like when the caterer drops off food, they don't stay for the party." The silence in the room was deafening. Some of the women looked uncomfortable, others confused. One of them, who I now recognized as Richard's sister Amanda, gave me a sympathetic look. All this playing nice, Elizabeth continued, waving her hand dismissively. The coffee dates, the sister bonding, that was just business. I needed a dress, you needed a customer. Let's not pretend it was anything more. Something snapped inside me. 3 years of silence, followed by months of fake reconciliation. It was too much. If she wanted the truth out, fine. Let's have all the truth. Just business. I stood up slowly, setting my wine glass down with deliberate care. "Okay, Elizabeth, let's talk business. Let's talk about how you've spent the last 2 months telling me what a boring, pathetic man your fiancé is." Elizabeth's face went pale. "Charlotte, don't you dare." "Oh, what was it you called him?" "A walking ATM. A necessary evil." Ladies, did you know Elizabeth doesn't even like Richard? She just likes his bank account. Amanda stood up from her seat, her face shocked. Elizabeth tried to interrupt, but I was on a roll. "And Amanda." I turned to her. "Your future sister-in-law here has some lovely opinions about you." "What was it you called her?" "Her?" Elizabeth sneered. "The crazy one. The family nutcase who needs therapy twice a week to function." Amanda's hand flew to her mouth. "Is that true?" "I have proof," I said, pulling out my phone. Elizabeth's been sending me voice messages for months. "Want to hear them?" Before Elizabeth could stop me, I played the first message. "God, Amanda is such a mental case. Richard says she's been in therapy for years. Can you imagine being that messed up?" Then another. "Jenny's Botox makes her look like a surprised fish. At least she'll look appropriate when she sees my dress. Her jaw's already permanently dropped." And another. "Sarah's so desperate to find a man, she'll probably try to catch the bouquet before I even throw it. What a pathetic spinster." One by one, the women around the room recognized Elizabeth's cruel nicknames and comments about them. Jenny touched her face self-consciously. Sarah wiped away tears. Amanda grabbed her purse and ran out the door. "These are your friends?" I said, my voice shaking. "Your bridesmaids, and this is how you talk about them behind their backs." The room erupted into chaos. Women were grabbing their bags, some crying, others yelling at Elizabeth. Elizabeth stood in the middle of it all, her face contorted with rage and panic, as her carefully constructed world fell apart around her. "She's lying," she screamed. "Charlotte's making this up because she's jealous." But the voice messages were still playing, her own voice condemning her with every word. I picked up my purse and the empty dress box at the door. I turned back one last time. "By the way, you haven't paid for the dress yet. I'll send you the invoice, full price this time. No family discount for someone who isn't really family." The morning after the bachelorette party disaster, my phone rang at 7:00 a.m. Mom's name flashed on the screen. "What have you done?" She screamed before I could even say hello. "Elizabeth is hysterical. The wedding might be called off. How could you ruin your sister's special day?" I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. How could I ruin it? Are you kidding me? Amanda won't even speak to her. Half the bridesmaids have dropped out. This is all your fault. The familiar anger bubbled up, the same feeling I'd had 3 years ago. Naturally, I am to blame. Isn't it always my fault? It's never Elizabeth's fault, Mom. Not when her company went bankrupt. Not when she was so disrespectful to me. Not after she disparaged her fiancé and his family for months. She hasn't even paid for her outfit, by the way. No Charlotte. "I'm done, Mom. She may now lie in her bed, which Elizabeth made. And you're just as nasty as Dad. Always supporting her, always defending her." I've finished everything. 1 week went by, and then another. I put myself into my profession, meeting with brides who genuinely valued what I did and designing new designs. I made an effort to ignore the wedding that could or might not have taken place. Then 3 weeks following the bachelorette party, I saw Mom's number on my phone once more. I nearly didn't respond. "Charlotte," she said in a different, hesitant, softer voice this time. "She told me all about it. I owe you an apology." Although the wedding had taken place, it paled in comparison to the lavish occasion Elizabeth had organized. Amanda and his parents did not go, but Richard had forgiven Elizabeth. The chapel was half empty, and the majority of the bridesmaids withdrew. Mom's voice cracked as she continued, "I was wrong. About Elizabeth, I've always been mistaken. Now I see that. All I wanted was for both of my girls to be content. I'm content without Elizabeth in my life, Mom." A lengthy pause ensued. "I understand." I deposited the whole $110,000 payment for the outfit. "Thank you." We then discovered a new normal. Only after I realized Elizabeth wouldn't be there did I resume going to see my folks. She apparently followed suit. We came up with an unwritten timetable. I received Sunday meals, she got holidays. We behaved like kind strangers when we happened to meet paths. Mom would occasionally try to tell me about Elizabeth, including her marital issues and her attempts to blend in with Richard's social group. Every time, I shifted the topic. I no longer cared about her life. My own life, it's very fantastic. The studio is doing quite well. We are considering opening a second site. This amazing man I'm dating creates handcrafted furniture. He understands the entire creative business aspect. One of my outfits appeared in a well-known wedding magazine last month. Late at night, I occasionally reflect on that bachelorette party and question whether I made the correct decision. However, I know I did because I recall Elizabeth's voice in those messages, the casual harshness, the phony sisterly closeness. The finest families are sometimes the ones you pick, such as coworkers who become family or friends who become sisters. I brought on 2 new seamstresses yesterday. I have an appointment with a real estate agent next week to discuss a location in the city. With or without the individuals who formerly held us back, life goes on.